And Australian Lucas Fowler were murdered while traveling. Aisha Husni joins us with the latest details on this murder mystery. And Aisha, police are releasing some new photos in the search for the suspect?
Yes, they are. Yeah. So the families, Heather, they're really worried that there is a killer on the loose in Canada as they come to terms with the brutal murders. Now, 24-year-old China Dees from North Carolina, and her 23-year-old Australian boyfriend, Lucas Fowler, they were found dead on the side of a highway in British Columbia. They were on a road trip through Canada driving this 1986 Chevy van. A woman claiming to have seen the couple said their van broke down Sunday on the side of the highway, and she actually asked the couple if they needed any help. Now, Lucas's father told Australian media, quote, "We're just in a very bad place." And to add to this mystery, Australian media now reporting that police found another man dead not far away on the same road next to a burnt vehicle. China's brother told the Charlotte Observer he's worried there's a killer on the loose.
This isn't enough. This is not enough. And there's a huge safety concern for people traveling in Canada in or around that area this summer and right now.
So Canadian authorities insisting this is not related to the murdered couple.
We have nothing to indicate that their deaths are linked to any other active and ongoing investigations in that area of the province, or that there's a heightened risk to public safety.
Now, we don't know yet how China or Lucas died. The families say they were told they wouldn't be able to have open casket funerals, and that leads them to believe this was a very, very brutal killing. Heather?
Yeah, much more to come on this for sure. Thank you so much. Well, a massive protest is expected in Puerto Rico today as the governor refuses to resign. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to take over one of the island's busiest roads today, hoping to convince Governor Ricardo Rossello to step down. Overnight, Rossello announced that he will not seek re-election, but that he won't quit over a leaked online conversation showing him mocking women and hurricane victims. His administration's also facing federal corruption charges. Today will mark the 10th straight day of protest. And watch this as video captures the moment a Navy intelligence aircraft was aggressively followed by a Venezuelan fighter jet over international waters. The U.S. Southern Command, who called the move unprofessional, sharing just how close the Russian-made jet got to the Navy aircraft. The incident comes as the U.S. and more than 50 other nations back opposition leader Juan Guaido's attempt to oust President Nicolas Maduro. Officials say that this shows Maduro's disregard for international laws, as well as Russia's irresponsible support for a, quote, illegitimate regime. Well, Venezuela at the center of rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif and National Security Advisor John Bolton trading jabs on Twitter. Zarif claiming that the U.S. is involved in economic terrorism by imposing sanctions on Iran and Venezuela. Bolton firing back by calling out Iran's support of the, quote, illegitimate regime, as we just called it. And this comes as Iran holds a British-flagged oil tanker seized in the Strait of Hormuz. Zarif blaming Bolton on Twitter, saying, make no mistake, having failed to lure Donald Trump into the war of the century, John Bolton is turning his venom against the UK in hopes of dragging it into a quagmire. Only prudence and foresight can thwart such ploys. Well, President Trump vowing to meet with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer as soon as possible after his visit to the southern border. Well, this comes as Mexico ignores today's deadline to make an asylum deal with the U.S. Griff Jenkins joins us now live in Washington with how the Trump administration is reacting. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Heather. Perhaps the start of talks towards bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform. We'll see. The president was tweeting this last night. Senator Chuck Schumer has finally gone to the southern border with some Democrat senators. This is a great thing. Nearby, he missed a large group of illegal immigrants trying to enter the U.S. illegally. They wildly rushed the Border Patrol. Some agents were badly injured. He continues, based on the comments made by Senator Schumer, he must have seen how dangerous and bad for our country the border is. It is not a manufactured crisis, as the fake news media and their Democrat partners tried to portray. He said he wants to meet. I will set up a meeting ASAP. You remember Schumer and a dozen other Democrat senators toured a Texas detention facility last Friday, blasting the conditions. This comes, Heather, as Mexico appears to have avoided today's threat of tariffs. Remember, the president gave Mexico 45 days to demonstrate significant progress, stemming the surge of migrants on our border. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo meeting with Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard yesterday, highlighting Mexico's efforts, which included deploying 21,000 Mexican National Guard troops and accepting nearly 20,000 migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. under the Remain in Mexico policy. Now, after the meeting, Pompeo had this to say.
But we've got a long way to go yet. There's still much more work to do. As for the next set of actions, I'll talk with the president and the teams back in Washington, and we'll decide exactly which tools and exactly how to proceed.
So right now, Mexico avoids being designated as a safe third country. That's what negotiations were back in June. That would make Mexico accept most asylum seekers. People would have to apply for asylum in the U.S. in Mexico rather than the U.S. We'll see what Secretary Pompeo has to say, Heather, this morning when he appears on Fox and Friends at 7 a.m. It's a very fluid situation.
Yeah, we need, I think three different countries to agree to do that, at least 3 or 4. Griff Jenkins, live for us. Thank you. Well, this is another big story that's happening this week. Democrats speaking out ahead of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's testimony on the Hill this week. House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler insisting the Russia report lays the groundwork for impeachment proceedings against the president.
The report presents very substantial evidence that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors, and we have to present, or let Mueller present those facts to the American people, and then see where we go from there, because the administration must be held accountable.
But Republicans say that's not on the minds of most Americans.
Any thought of impeachment is waning, and they know that because the report said that there was no collusion definitively and there was no charged obstruction. The Mueller report is a one-sided report that has not been questioned from the other side. This is our chance to do.
Well, Mueller will testify on the Russia investigation this Wednesday. Well, Congressman Mark Green, member of the House Oversight Committee, says the Russia report doesn't really matter to Democrats. He says that they just want more screen time to push their 2020 narrative.
I think that's ridiculous. Like, he's done this exhaustive report for the judiciary, for the Justice Department, and he's suddenly going to provide more details. That would just either admit that he failed in doing a comprehensive report, or he was intentionally trying to, do something like that. It's ridiculous to think that he's going to come up with more details than he did in a 2-year investigation and an official report to the Justice Department. That's what this is about. It's just more TV for those guys to advance their 2020 narrative. That's all the Democrats want out of this.
Well, some Democrats vowing to keep trying to impeach the president, despite their own party's majority voting down their efforts. Let's talk about some extreme weather now. Today, flash flooding and damaging winds are threatening several states across the U.S. Forecasters sending the warning as a cold front passes through the Midwest and Northeast. It's expected to cool off nearly 200 million people as a dangerous heat wave comes to an end, blamed for at least 6 deaths. Now, the extreme heat is linked to some major power outages, one forcing an evacuation at a Philadelphia retirement community, the other leaving more than 50,000 New Yorkers in the dark. Now, the extreme heat even leaving roads buckled in South Dakota. But in the meantime, 8 people are injured when lightning strikes a crowded Florida beach. One man is in critical condition after taking a direct hit from the lightning. Witnesses rushed onto the beach in the middle of the storm to pull him to safety and then start CPR. All of the other victims are expected to be okay. So that's good news. Well, here's something fun. New York Yankees legend Mariano Rivera joins the Baseball Hall of Fame. The 13-time All-Star is known for his 19-year career in pinstripes, helping the team collect 5 World Series titles. In front of a packed crowd in New York, the closing pitcher recalled coming to the U.S. from Panama, not knowing any English.
I did it with dignity, with honor and pride. I tried to carry the pinstripes the best that I could. I think I did it right with that.
Rivera is the only player to be unanimously voted into the Hall of Fame. He entered Cooperstown alongside pitchers Mike Mussina and Roy Halladay. So congrats to all of them. Well, the time now is about 11 minutes after the top of the hour. And Iran now blaming National Security Advisor John Bolton, as you heard, after the rogue nation seizes a British oil tanker. So how should the U.S. respond? Jim Hansen says Iran needs to pay the price now, and he joins us live up next. And a close call with a great white shark caught on camera. The big scare for a little boy fishing with his family. Wow. Dramatic moments before Iran seized a British oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. And now the regime claims the U.S. is trying to drag the U.K. into war. So how should the U.S. respond? President of Security Studies Group, Jim Hansen, joins us now with more. Jim, thank you for joining us so early this morning.
Good to be with you.
So listening to that audio tape there, does that tell you anything more about Iran's intentions?
I think Iran's intentions are perfectly clear, and it's kind of a joke for them to claim that we're trying to drag the UK into the war. This seems to be a pretty one-sided attempt by them to provoke some sort of military action so they can scare, I guess, the Europeans and everyone else. And it's been a month plus of a wave of attacks by them and their proxies across the region. They've hit oil tankers, pipelines, civilian airports, and President Trump has been listening to his allies and to his advisors who've been counseling restraint, but thus far that certainly hasn't worked.
Yeah, and you just referenced this, so let's bring this up from Iran's foreign minister saying that the UK is being dragged into the war of the century by John Bolton. They say, make no mistake, having failed to lure at-real Donald Trump into war of the century and fearing collapse of his B team, Ambassador John Bolton is turning his venom against the UK in hopes of dragging it into a quagmire. Only prudence and foresight can thwart such ploys. What about that?
You know, Zarif is having fun, all right? He's a propagandist. That's what he does. The bottom line is the UK is leaderless right now. Theresa May is no longer really in charge, and they need to get their hostages out. All right, that's the first thing. They've got hostages on that tanker. But once that is done, it's time for the U.S. and the U.K. to show Iran that they cannot shut down and menace shipping in the Gulf. I think we need a no-float, no-fly zone through the shipping lanes there, and say if a boat, a drone, a helicopter, or any piece of Iranian military equipment leaves the coast or one of their island bases, we blow it to smithereens. That's the message they need to get.
You know, at last report, you mentioned those hostages. That ship, which the UK ship, which was owned, it was a Swedish-owned ship, had 23 crew members on board, Indian, Latvian, Filipino, and Russian. So will that change things?
I think those people's lives matter, and I think we don't want to take action until we negotiate, and probably the Brits negotiate that release. But once it's done, it's time for the Iranians to pay a price. Thus far, our actions have been purely self-defensive. We splashed one drone that went too close to an American ship, but we've done nothing to make them pay for the long string of attacks they've conducted. So it's time for some of those Iranian military assets to turn into smoldering wreckage.
What do you mean by that, though, Jim? How would the U.S. go about doing that without instigating full-scale war? Because no one wants that.
We know where the IRGC bases are that they launch those speedboats from, and we should destroy every one of them. I mean, there aren't that many. So if we hit a couple dozen places, we could basically wipe out their ability to create a large-scale menace. Now, they'll still be able to conduct asymmetric attacks. They can still do terrorist attacks, but it would show them that they are not going to be allowed to shut down a vital shipping lane and disrupt commerce for the entire world.
Yeah. Jim Hansen, in live for us this morning. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Have a good day. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour, and Senator Kamala Harris feeling the heat from Taylor Swift fans over a fundraiser and why they can't shake it off. And call him the wedding crasher in chief. President Trump surprising some newlyweds at his New Jersey golf club. Carly Shimkus has a reaction to the surprise guest of honor. Look at that. Can you imagine? A massive great white shark nearly bites a boy on a fishing boat. The close call happening near Cape Cod. The shark jumping right out of the water. He did that to steal a fish, apparently, as it was being reeled in. Thankfully, no one was injured. Boy, very lucky. Cape Cod, be warned. Well, fans of Taylor Swift not happy with Senator Kamala Harris after the presidential hopeful attended a star-studded fundraiser at music executive Scooter Braun's L.A. mansion. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with reaction. Good morning.
Good morning. So Kamala Harris may have raised some much-needed campaign cash, but at the expense of support from some Swifties.
You don't want to make them mad.
Don't want to do that. So Scooter Braun recently purchased Taylor Swift's old music label, which means he now owns the rights to all of Taylor Swift's songs.
And that's been a huge controversy.
That's right, because she came out with this Tumblr post and accused him of previously bullying her. So there's all this reaction there. So now Taylor Swift fans are angry that Kamala Harris is sort of rubbing elbows with Scooter Braun. So there's been a lot of negative reaction. And now some people are reacting to the whole situation on social media. Austin says that he has to rethink his whole stance on the Scooter-Taylor feud now that Kamala Harris is involved. Magdalene thinks the whole situation is a little silly, saying, let me translate. Scooter Braun and Taylor are in a feud, so Kamala Harris going to a fundraiser at his house held by him means she's risks losing the votes of Swift fans in the Democratic primary. First world problems she used as a hashtag. And then another Twitter user says, so I guess Kamala is clearly not part of Taylor Swift's squad. No, she is not. So Kamala Harris needs to ask herself, is the money worth the drama on social media? I think the answer to that is yes.
Interesting watching that Hollywood connection, though, because everybody's kind of wondering who's Hollywood going to throw their support behind.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris does have big-time support from a lot of really rich people in California because she's from California.
We'll see if there's more to come.
That's right.
But there is more to come in terms of Thor. If you've seen Thor, part of the Marvel comic series, Natalie Portman will be the first female to play the role. Listen to the announcement.
There's only one person who could play that role, and she's here. I'm going to introduce her to you now. Please welcome to the stage, Natalie Portman.
She will be wielding the hammer now. How crazy is that? So she was previously in these movies, but she was a human being. She was not, a superhero. So we'll have to see how she becomes one. Chris Hemsworth, who is the actual Thor, is also going to be in the movies.
Great Thor. Oh, so
yeah.
So more than one Thor.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure out how all that happens.
Yeah.
This is going to be for the fourth installment of the franchise called Thor: Love and Thunder. It's going to be out November 2021. A lot of reaction on social media, of course. Kenneth says, totally was blown away. I cannot wait for this either. And another Twitter user says, Lashana Lynch is the new 007. Natalie Portman is the new Thor. Now just waiting for The Rock to be the new Mary Poppins.
I like that.
That's a hilarious
Mary Poppins.
Yeah, so a lot of gender role reversals, and some people like it.
That was a really funny tweet.
Yeah.
So the president, he's done this before, and he did it again. Crashed a New Jersey wedding. Watch.
Amazing. Interesting stuff there. That, of course, taking place at his Bedminster, New Jersey golf course. The footage going viral over the weekend. One person on Instagram says, "What are the odds of the President of the United States crashing your wedding? That's one heck of a wedding to remember." And another person on the same platform says, "Good Americans honored by a POTUS visit. Certainly a memorable event." So congratulations to the happy couple, PJ Mangelli and Nicole Marie.
Congratulations. Right. So what a way to start it off.
Absolutely. They're certainly going to have some great footage.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Carly.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, the time right now is about 27 minutes after the top of the hour, and all eyes are on Robert Mueller ahead of this week's highly anticipated testimony. But will he say anything different, anything at all, than he did nearly 2 months ago?
We chose those words carefully, and the work speaks for itself. And the report is my testimony.
Or are Democrats just trying to turn this into a 2020 campaign event? Our political panel is on deck to debate up next. But welcome back. A look at our top headlines for you this morning, starting with a Fox News alert. Brand new photos just released of a couple's abandoned van after they were found murdered on the side of a highway. Police believe that North Carolina resident China Deese and her Australian boyfriend Lucas Fowler were killed after their car broke down during a road trip through Canada. A massive protest expected in Puerto Rico today as the governor refuses to resign. Overnight, hundreds of thousands of people are expected to take over one of the island's busiest roads, hoping to convince Governor Ricardo Rossello to step down. And today, late Justice John Paul Stevens will lie in repose at the U.S. Supreme Court. Stevens served more than 3 decades on the bench before retiring in 2010. He's known for authoring the court's decision in 2004 to give prisoners at Guantanamo Bay the right to plead for their release in U.S. courts. A private funeral will be held tomorrow at Arlington National Cemetery. Well, all eyes on Robert Mueller, who heads to Capitol Hill this week for one of the most anticipated hearings in decades. Democrats chomping at the bit to question him over his Russia report.
The report presents very substantial evidence that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors, and we have to present or let Mueller present those facts to the American people and then see where we go from there, because the administration must be held accountable.
But could Democrats turn this into a 2020 campaign event? Here to debate, Daniel Turner, president of Power the Future, and Mark Levine, member of the Virginia House of Delegates. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Daniel, I'll start with you. Do you think that Democrats will turn this into a 2020 event?
Absolutely. I mean, it makes sense for them to try to do so because they don't really have much else to run on. And this is what they've been doing since 2016. I think the risk that both sides run here is that in recent polling, there's been no interest clearly in impeachment. So that's a Democrat problem. But for both sides, I saw a poll where 40% of the people who were polled never even heard of Robert Mueller. So there is a large middle America that really does not care about this. And if either Republicans or Democrats try to play this too hard, they could just be speaking to a group of people that's not listening.
Yeah, Mark, what do you think about that? I mean, could they turn voters off if they just kind of turn it into too much of a show?
Well, I think Daniel's right that most Americans are ignorant of the Mueller report. They don't know what's in it. They haven't read the 448 pages. And I think Americans have a right to know if their president is committing criminal acts. I mean, the Attorney General lied, and that's what, of course, Robert Mueller said. The Attorney General lied when he said the president was not guilty. There's damning evidence, substantial evidence of impeachable conduct in the report. Most Americans haven't read the 448 report. So this is a way to bring this criminal information to the American public.
Yeah, I thought, Daniel, what he in fact said was that the AG or the media had misinterpreted what the AG said, something along those lines.
Yeah, it was interesting. He actually condemned the AG personally. He said that Bob Barr did not give an accurate depiction of a summary of the report, and that's what we have
the
now.
media.
And the March 29th hearing that Mr. Mueller held, it shouldn't be a piece of modern art where everyone can interpret it a certain way. That's not how we want our Justice Department to work. So I welcome this hearing, and maybe we will get some clear answers. But look, if you're a staffer for a Republican or a Democrat, you are drafting questions right now to extract the answer that you want to hear to run it into a campaign event. It hasn't worked thus far for Democrats, so maybe this time they'll get him to say something he hasn't thus far, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, and he said that
I think this is the beginning.
But wait, Mark, I want you to respond to this tweet from Mark Meadows on Democrats possibly orchestrating the hearing as a campaign event. He said this over the weekend. Democrats privately orchestrating the Mueller hearing this week to be a 2020 campaign event for the left. This isn't about transparency. If it was, we'd be talking about the evidence of blatant FISA abuse, warrantless secret recordings, and declassifying documents.
Well, we do need to talk about the evidence and report. You know, just like with Richard Nixon, when Leon Jaworski laid out a roadmap of the presidential misconduct, President Nixon, unindicted co-conspirator. Now we have President Trump, an unindicted co-conspirator. The American people have a right to know what their president knew, when he knew it, and what criminal acts and obstruction of justice he was engaged in. And I think this is the beginning, not the end. This is the first testimony, and then we're going to bring up a parade of witnesses all to talk about what the president did.
And Daniel, that also includes finding out when Mueller knew what he knew, that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and why he didn't let the public know.
Absolutely. There's an awful lot of information I think Republicans are curious to find out. This hearing lasted for months and months. It cost millions of dollars. There's clearly evidence that Robert Mueller knew and his team knew, and yet they dragged this out for a very long time. So I'd be curious to get some of that information about FISA warrants, about collusion with the Hillary Clinton campaign, about Fusion GPS. There's an awful lot of information I think Republicans are curious to know.
All right, Daniel, Mark, thank you.
It went on for a long time because the president kept lying to investigators.
And maybe after this, we'll all be able to move on to some important topics and policies that impact everyday people. All right, Daniel, Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, some other headlines for you. A desperate search underway for a Texas mother last seen at a concert. El Paso police fear that Erica Gaynor may be in danger. And Gaynor went on a date Saturday evening, sharing some pictures at the concert. But the man that she was with says that he saw her take an Uber. Her family says this is not like her to disappear.
Anything she's doing, she always has her phone. This is not like her. It's not like her. She never, when I have my son, she always calls me. She always texts me. She always calls me.
Well, Gaynor was last seen wearing this white dress. Well, a new law will allow students to take mental health days off from school. It will be an excused absence in Oregon, just like a regular sick day. In the past, only physical illnesses could be excused. The new measure was proposed by 4 students hoping to change the stigma around mental health in a state with some of the highest suicide rates. Well, a toddler is struck by a foul ball and rushed to the hospital. Indian shortstop Francisco Lindor, who hit the ball, says the child is in stable condition in Cleveland, and he's now begging the MLB to extend the protective netting.
It sucks. You don't want that to happen to anybody.
In on some fun a little bit while responding to a noise complaint. It's about 20 minutes until the top of the hour, and bad booze kills 19 people in Costa Rica. Well, it turns out that it was tainted with a toxin found in antifreeze. Could this have any link to the mysterious deaths in the Dominican Republic? Our next guest compares the cases. Back, a national alert issued in Costa Rica where 19 people have died after drinking alcohol that was tainted with toxic levels of methanol. About 30,000 bottles have now been confiscated involving several different brands that may be tainted. Here to weigh in is Dr. Devi Napiam Parampal. She's from the NYU School of Medicine Associate Professor. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to see you.
What do we know about these latest cases from Costa Rica and what the alcohol is tainted with?
Well, this product, methanol, is a type of alcohol. So the one that we drink is called ethanol. That basically makes you feel a little buzzed, a little bit more relaxed. Methanol is used in wiper fluid, to clean windshields. It's used for solvents.
And methanol is what's been found in this.
Exactly. So it is a type of alcohol. Most likely this is related to some type of manufacturing error, that when they were trying to make the ethanol, they accidentally made some methanol. So that can happen in counterfeit liquors. That can happen by accident, although that's very uncommon. And it can also happen in cases of poisoning. So the times that you usually hear about this is, for example, if a toddler gets into some type of solvent. So the problem with methanol is that it's so much more dangerous than alcohol. It can make you blind. It can damage your kidneys, and you might not even realize this at first, and then you can die high. Even 30 milliliters, which is 2/3 of a shot glass, that's enough to cause permanent blindness.
We want to take a look at what the Costa Rican Health Ministry had to say. Here's their statement. They said the Ministry of Health continues to carry out operations throughout the national territory in order to reduce the exposure of consumers to contaminated products. So did I hear you say that this couldn't have happened by accident?
It could happen by accident, but I would say for people here, let's say, that they're buying alcohol from the store, major brands, it's not something that they really have to worry about. But in Costa Rica, these look like there are more local or regional brands, so maybe might have had some type of error in the manufacturing process.
So obviously everyone's mind goes straight to what's been reported lately in the Dominican Republic, where at least 6 of the 14 deceased American tourists consumed some type of alcohol while there, a lot of them from the mini bar. So do you think this could be related? Maybe this would be one of the causes of the deaths there?
It's possible, but one of the other things they're looking at there is a different type of poisoning, so related to something called organophosphates. Now, that's something that's found in pesticides. So those folks, although some people were drinking from the mini bar, other people had different symptoms that you wouldn't necessarily see with methanol poisoning. So it's possible there's an overlap, but there might be a little bit more to the story. And also, authorities will have to look to see, are all the deaths related, or could this be 2 different things or different clusters, different causes?
With the methanol, in terms of symptoms, they can appear later after the fact, so then people aren't aware that one has to do with the other?
Exactly. So that's the danger. Let's say you drink too much alcohol. You might know pretty much within a couple hours that you're really sick. Methanol, you might not realize it right away. It can happen days later. It's because the liver is trying to get rid of methanol and then converts it into something that's more dangerous. So you could have headache, abdominal pain, all these things. But unless you thought that you had some other issue, you know, you might just think you're sick, you're on vacation, or you ate something wrong.
It's scary stuff. It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Well, Bernie Sanders is making the fight for 15 one of his 2020 rally calls.
Because we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
We have got to raise the minimum wage.
We should raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
And the presidential hopeful finally decided to